Hello, I'm Ronnie Agnew. I'm the Executive Director of Mississippi Public Broadcasting, and I'm with Taiwo Gaynor, who is our Assistant Director of Television. And we're here to talk about the legendary Bob Moses and to commemorate his life through a person who probably knew him as well as anyone. As most people may know, and some don't, that we lost Mr. Moses on July, I think it was 24th, 2021.
25th.
It was July 25th, 2021. We got the news about his illness, I think, the day before, the 24th, and that was very tragic for all of us. And Taiwo let me know that this was happening. And for all of us in Mississippi, even though he was born, Mr. Moses was born in Harlem, for all of us in Mississippi, there's just a very close connection to Mr. Moses. And I just felt like it was a wasted opportunity if we didn't speak to someone who really knew Mr. Moses in ways that many of us didn't actually. So I guess my first question to you, Taiwo, is how did you come to know Bob Moses, the great Bob Moses?
Well, Bob and my grandmother, Taiwo Gaynor, were friends for many years. They met in Tanzania, Africa, where my grandmother lived. She worked as some kind of government accountant.
Yeah.
And Bob and his family, Janet, and I believe it was Omo and Maisha. They were babies at the time. And they came to stay with my grandmother. I don't know why they stayed with her. I think they were just other Americans in the area. And so they became lifetime friends. And so that's where that connection happened with our families. And later on, years later, when Bob created the Algebra Project, my dad was a part of the New York Algebra Project. Yeah. And so he brought us into the organization that way. He was forcing us at 15 years old, me and my brother, to come to these math literacy workshops, and we were not interested in math literacy workshops.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. There are a lot of people out there who know a lot about Bob Moses, and there's some people out there who don't know as much as they probably should. And hopefully history will teach folks about the importance of this great man and the impact that he made. But can you just explain and tell people about the Algebra Project? And tell them what Bob's vision was for this.
So the Azure Project was a math literacy program for inner city schools, inner city children. Yeah. There was a nationwide program. Bob's work as a civil rights leader is what led him to doing this work with the Azure Project. What he always said was the only part of the civil rights work that never got completed was fixing education. And so that was his mission after his work in civil rights, was to adequately equip people to be educated properly. So math was what he thought was the most important avenue in terms of education when it comes to science and engineering and anything highly technical. So that's what kind of led him towards that program. And so, you know.
And so back to what you were just saying a second ago about your experience with it. Mm-hmm. How did you do when you were in this great program that became internationally famous?
Well, I didn't.
And how did your twin brother Kehinde? How did you guys perform in those classes?
In math?
Yeah, the math class.
In math, we were probably average at best. I wasn't a great math student. Yeah. What's interesting though is after we did those workshops and I started spending time at the Azure Project, my math scores went up. And I don't think it was necessarily because I started getting smarter. I think it was because I was able to understand the math principles a lot better. That was one of the more strategic parts of this program, was they designed curriculum to help people understand math by applying it to everyday life. And so they had different types of curriculum that was designed around everyday life, like travel and things like that. So, it was remarkable that worked out that way. But I guess that was Bob's vision all along. Yeah.
So you're 15 years old and you've taken these classes and your scores are going up. But there's something you've always told me that I really don't know how you can fill in those gaps, but today you can. And you've always told me that Bob is responsible for you getting to Mississippi. Can you tell me that story?
Absolutely. So Like I said, we would go to these workshops, and there was one summer we were at a workshop. I believe it was CUNY University of New York. It was during the summer, and I went into a break room and I saw a guy at a computer. I forgot his name, but he was designing the curriculum books for the work that we were doing in the other room, and I was completely fascinated. I always loved art, but I was like, he's designing books on a computer. He's being creative, and so I told Bob, I was like, I want to learn how to do that. And Bob, he's like, well, we're going to start a workshop where you can learn how to do that. So he developed this workshop. It was just 2 or 3 of us, and we would go to this guy's apartment in Harlem, and he would teach us graphic design, all this page maker, until it became Adobe. And that led to us doing other workshops. There was another workshop that he developed here in Mississippi. He said, I want you to come down for a month during one summer and do a graphic design workshop, learn more about graphic design. And I think his vision was ultimately me learn to do graphic design so I can help create curriculum books, because that's exactly what happened. When I was 16, about to turn 17, I was already out of high school because my birthday is late in the year. He invited me to come down to Mississippi, which was only supposed to be for a month. They were going to pay me to basically teach myself graphic design in hopes of being able to help develop these curriculum books, working directly with Bob. And 1 month turned into well over 20 years. I came to Mississippi and never left. I mean, I never thought I would be in Mississippi. I came from the greatest city in the greatest borough, Brooklyn, of all. I mean, it's like Mississippi was the last thing I was thinking about. But every bit of who I am and what I do now points directly to that time. I mean, being at Mississippi Public Broadcasting and, producing video content and creating, all of the different educational content that we create, there's a direct connection from graphic design to what I'm doing right now. Now, I can only thank Bob for that opportunity. I mean, I was telling a friend of mine that we were talking about how people's lives can be changed. When you have a bunch of young people that grow up in the inner city and they all go to the same schools, how is it that one person succeeds and another person doesn't? And, my only answer was just what you're exposed to. And I was exposed to that at a young age, and it made all the difference. So, I'm grateful that I met the Moses, that my grandmother had that relationship, that my father forced me to go to these workshops when I wanted to chase girls around all summer. So that made a huge difference in who I am, what I do, my kids, my wife. None of those things would be if I didn't commit to that decision years ago.
When you think about it, from Tanzania to Harlem, Brooklyn, and to Mississippi, that connection. But Bob Moses always had a great connection to Mississippi. He, basically he was a civil rights icon.
And interestingly enough, I did not realize what he did in the civil rights movement when I was working with him. So we stayed in a house in Northeast Jackson. It was this huge house, and his sons stayed on one side of the house, and then on the other side of the house was a small little kitchenette and 2 bedrooms. So that was me and Bob's area. So 6 a.m, Bob would just be coming in from Cambridge and making ginger tea and talking about what we're going to be doing. And it was like, it was a very strange time. And I had no idea I was like, oh, this is the math man coming to give me some work to do. And it's cool because I enjoyed it. But I had no idea what he did. I was like, oh, he was a civil rights guy. Probably, I know he had gotten hurt a couple times. But I had no idea what he had actually done in the civil rights movement. I didn't know it was voting rights and
mobilizing people and organizing.
And when I realized what he had done, it was when I was working here at MPB.
Wow.
And we produced that documentary,
Yes.
Freedom Summer
Yes, you
documentary.
did. Absolutely.
And so we had to do all that research and that deep dive into everything that took place. And I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I didn't realize that this man that was next door to me had done all of these things, and I was completely unaware.
Yeah.
You know, maybe somewhat grateful that I was able to be blinded by, going into this content with fresh eyes. Maybe that was beneficial, but I had no idea. And I mean, Bob wasn't a mediocre player. He was a major architect of Freedom Summer.
Yes,
I mean,
he was.
To be head of COFO, the Council of Office of Federated, Council of Office of Federated Organizations. I think that's what it was. And so he was basically coordinating all of these civil rights
groups,
organizations and mobilizing all these young people to drive voter rights. Not just that affected the entire country. I mean, that affected the world ultimately. And it's remarkable. What's really awesome is he didn't wear it on his sleeve. I had no idea. And he didn't brandish that. He just was helping young people get to where they needed to get to. So it was never about him. It was about what he was doing, even to the day he died.
And that's one of the questions I was going to have for you was how many, I've heard your personal story. You've told me a lot, just in bits and pieces, but only after this great man passed away that I just really started thinking about you. That whole day when you called and you told me what was going on, I thought about you. But how many Taiwo Gaynors are out there that Bob Moses touched? I mean,
I have no idea. I mean, I can only assume that it's thousands. I mean, the Algebra Project, developed a whole group of young people all across this country. I mean, those young people traveled to other parts of the world, doing this work. And then there were another organization that came out of the Azure Project was the Young People's Project. That is who I actually worked for, which was headed by Oma Moses and Maisha Moses, and the other Moses, parts of family. And there are thousands of young people that were affected by those groups of people. And I can only imagine that, that it spread out even further than that. I mean, I don't think you can quantify the impact that Bob has had on lives. I mean, set aside the civil rights movement and voting rights, but his impact on young people through just the Azure Project and math literacy is enormous. And I feel like my story is special, but it really is not unique because he has done this over and over and over again. I mean, I used to live with Bob. When I first came to Mississippi, I lived in his house. But there are many other young people that have lived in the Moses' house doing this kind of work and being pushed into their own directions. I mean, it's a part of who he is, so I wish I could understand or quantify it, but I can't. I don't think it can be quantified.
When the great ones leave us, we all have a little bit of them inside of us, and that we take with us all the time, and we carry it with us, and they become, like you said earlier, a part of who you are. What is the greatest thing that you'll take with you from you being around and having such access to this great man?
I think it's several things. One is operating in your purpose. Doing it all the way. Don't hold back. Sharpen your blade. Continue in what it is that you are supposed to be doing. And while you're doing it, practice humility. But I think probably most important is paying it forward. I mean, that is exactly what happened for me. My path was paid forward by Bob and his family. And so, I try to practice that as much as possible. I saw a picture that popped up on my Facebook timeline. I did send you Facebook memories, and there was a picture of education initiative that we have here at MPB. It was the Summer Media Learning Institute. And there was a bunch of young high school kids sitting in the post audio studio. They were writing original music for their film that they just recorded. And you could see all these young people glued to this television screen, looking at the work that they'd done. And it was just like, you know, you don't know what these young people are thinking or what impact that whatever they were doing had on them.
Yeah.
But I felt proud just to be a part of it, because I don't, that's what happened for me. I didn't learn all of this stuff because I just started opening up books. People invested time in me. People, guided me through what I do, and people invested in me. And I feel like, that's what I get to do with my work. That's what I try to do outside of work with people that I interact with. I think that is the most tangible gift that you can give a person is time to turn them on to something. Yeah. So I think.
And in fact, we're about to wrap this up, but just, is there like one thing that you would, that really you remember about Bob Moses that maybe no one else knows? You mentioned earlier in the conversation that he never wore on his sleeve. He was just who he was because he did it for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm. Do I know something that most people don't know about Bob?
It sounds like to me there's a lot of things. I mean, you came up with a program and he instituted it with 2 or 3 people. I mean, he just took people's ideas and made them happen.
Yeah, he made a way for them, and unselfishly.
Yeah.
Just if he could do it, he would do it.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
Yeah.
It was just a part of his mission, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't know that I know something. I mean, I know he liked to sing songs.
Oh, did he?
It was songs
Oh, okay.
It was I forgot what song. Maybe it was Georgia was a song that he really.
Oh, he liked Georgia.
Yeah, and I believe. I believe he called his wife Georgia.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But, he loved music.
Yeah.
He loved to swim. I mean, I remember being in the water with Bob, and I could not keep up with him. I was like, man, I'm getting out.
Yeah.
I mean, he would just do laps back and forth.
Wow.
I mean, he was, I was amazed at how fit he was.
Yeah.
He always ate well. He was, I've never really seen Bob get angry.
Wow.
He was always just calm and stoic.
Yeah.
He was a one of a kind. He was truly a walking superhero.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no one that I knew that was like him.
Yeah. Well, Taiwo, I hope that you can just keep the legacy alive through your sons and your family and all the people that you touch. And I can just say this already, that you touch a lot of people. I mean, you're the embodiment of Bob Moses. You give back, and that's something that's obvious to those of us who know you and been around you, that you definitely got this. You got this from someone, and I can tell that obviously you get a part of him certainly lives in you, and I think it always will.
I appreciate that.
So
I hope to live up to that. I'm going to try.
I think you will. Appreciate you giving some time today to talk about this great man, and I think that you did offer some insight into his life. That frankly, you had a front row seat into greatness.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks don't ever get that opportunity. Yeah. So thanks, I appreciate it.
Thank you.